Good evening, everybody. Good evening to all present, and good evening to anybody watching on TorahAnytime.com. We are always grateful for your support. Today's shir should be for the full shalema of Rafael Chaim ben Sarah, Eliyahu Eliezer ben Chana, Eliyahu ben Tzipora, Ruchama Sarah Miriam bat Tamar, Miriam Devora bat Chai Liora, Yonatan Myers, Yisrael Yona ben Naomi Tzipora, Joanna Chaya bat Chana, and Shai Shalom ben Leah Chaya. They should all have a full shalema among the cholim of Klal Yisrael. Now, once in a while, I like to mention a Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, that I learn with my children, because I learn every week with them, and more often than not, something nice will come out of that. So, I was learning with my sons the Mishnah, which says that the world is like a corridor, a prosdor, or an anteroom. What are we supposed to do in this anteroom? We're supposed to prepare for the world to come. Now, simply speaking, that means that when we talk about a corridor or a small room, it means to compare this world to something which is very, I won't say bland, but limited, very limited. There's not much going on. You don't want to set yourself up in this world in such a limited environment and forego the world to come. So normally we translate the word prosdor as corridor, but there are various translations which give it a different understanding. Some say the word prosdor excuse me, means lobby or foyer. So when I was explaining this to my son Yoni, he's only 8 years old, I said to him, Yoni, what do you think the word lobby or foyer means to you? What does it suggest to you? And I was hoping he would turn around and say, it means a small room that you can't really do anything there, and then you have to prepare yourself to go into the banquet hall, so don't make all your preparations and don't. But he said to me, when you say the word foyer, I picture a room with lots of doors in it. So you could go through any one of these doors. And then I thought to myself, that could be the reason why the Mishnah uses the word prosdor, which can mean like a lobby of a hotel. Because in this world, although comparatively we say prepare yourself in the small room in the lobby so that you can get to the big banquet hall where it's really all happening, that's what you're saving up for. The term prosdor, the term lobby, could also mean that there are lots of opportunities open for us. We've got lots of doors we can look through. And it could be a lifetime's work to decide which one of these doors that we should go through. And I think the underlying message of that is that a person until 120 years may not know for sure what his purpose is in this world, which is a very upsetting thing. It's a very sobering thought. The person could be living a life not to his full potential. He may not have been working towards the right door, choosing that right door. But really what this understanding, my son's understanding, says to me is that a person has to choose very, very wisely which door he's going to be approaching, which door he's going to go out from. Because perhaps one of those doors might not be the right one. Maybe not all of those doors will lead into the traklin, as the Mishnah says, the banquet hall. It might lead to somewhere else. So a person has to spend his whole life choosing very wisely the direction he's going to take. So kol hakavod Yoni for that. He had a big smile on his face when I told him I was going to mention it today, so We are told that the quintessential chok, the quintessential statute of the Torah, a statute, by the way, is a mitzvah which defies understanding. So what's the quintessential statute of the Torah? Says this week's parasha, the para aduma, the red cow. Now, I did go into this in some detail in previous shiurim. One of them was called the stick, and before, the year before that was called Holy Cow. So if you get a chance to check out those two shiurim on Torah Anytime, that's a good preface to what I'm going to say today. I will try not to repeat myself. So this is the quintessential law of the Torah, the law of the red cow. Now the red cow is an extremely rare animal. It's the animal that when in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, they would burn this animal, they would take the ashes of this animal, mix it with certain things like hyssop, and it would be made into a serum, a formula, which when sprayed over the person who is tameh mate, who is impure from a dead body, would make him pure. And then without going into the rest of the details, it is a process, it is a mitzvah which is the most confusing, the most befuddling mitzvah in the whole Torah. Famously, this was the mitzvah that King Solomon could not comprehend. Who was wiser than King Solomon? And yet he did not understand the workings and the mechanics of this mitzvah. So we're told that this whole process about taking the cow, burning it, getting the ashes, sprinkling the liquid on an impure person and making him pure, and yet the person who's doing the sprinkling he himself becomes impure. How that ironic whole situation, it defies logic. You can think about it till the cows come home, excuse the pun. Actually didn't, I just realized that. You can think about it till the cows come home, you will never understand it. Because greater minds than us spent many, many, many hours, weeks and years, and got no further than we did. So, the question is asked. It says the pasuk, Zot chukat Torah. This is the statute of the Torah. Shouldn't it say this is the statute of tumah or tahara? This is the statute of purity or impurity, because the subject we're dealing with here is how to purify somebody who becomes impure. So what does it mean? This is the statute of the whole Torah. It's not. It's a statute which relates only to one particular subject. So why are we saying this is the statute of the Torah? There are many statutes in the Torah. There's milk and meat. There's Sha'at. Why do we pick this one? This is the one. Now, you could answer it simply and say, this is the one and only one which King Solomon didn't understand. That's one answer. There's a deeper answer here. And that is that just like this particular mitzvah, of all the 613 mitzvot, this particular one is the one that is incomprehensible, so too all the other 612 are also incomprehensible. Because we think we know the reasons behind don't kill, behind don't bear false witness. We apply our own logic and our own understanding, like the blind leading the blind, and we say, we know all the reasons for this. It's logical. It must mean this. Kosher, it must be, we can't eat pig. There's this old nonsense that has been passed down from one fool to another. You know why we can't eat pig? Because back in the day, it was unhealthy and it had this tapeworm in it. But now, there's no tapeworms, it's very healthy, so we can eat pig. So, you understand the Torah? Now, you come up with this logic, and now you understand why it's written in the Torah, don't eat the flesh of a pig. Nonsense. First of all, one shouldn't apply one's own logic to the mitzvot. That's why it said Zot Chokat Torah. This is just like this mitzvah is unknown, so too all the mitzvahs in the Torah are also unknown. But secondly, who says, I'm fighting their logic with their own logic. Who says now that cows are also healthy? They don't have any diseases. Anyone heard of mad cow disease? I think we've all heard of mad cow disease. Oh, but cow has always been healthy. And then what about people who substitute for cow meat, they substitute horse meat? And now suddenly we all know what we're talking about. So you can see how dangerous a path it is to apply your own human logic to the holy commandments of the Torah. That's something we definitely shouldn't do. So although many of the mitzvot may seem to have very obvious explanations, the obvious one is don't kill. Can't kill, that's antithetical to society. No society can live if there's anarchy and death and murder on the streets. There has to be a system where, there's a policing of society so that people don't kill. Otherwise you'll have meshuggahs out on the street. If they do it now, even when there is a law, meshuggahs can go out in Woolwich and cut people up like that. Imagine what it is when there's no law. God forbid, law aleinu. So that's an obvious one, we might think. But do we know all the reasons? Can we say, we can now put our finger on why God put that in His Torah? The answer is no. Because it's not just the red cow that's unfathomable. It's every single mitzvah. Although we've got these reasons, it's not the be-all and end-all. It's certainly not the depth of the Torah. There's much more depth to all these other mitzvot. And we said last year, or was it 2 years ago, one of my favorite vorts on the Torah, my favorite little interesting pasuk in this week's parasha, because it says Zot Chukat Torah. This is the statute of the Torah, but then it says, I can't actually find it here. Maybe Alex will help me. Adam ki yamut ba'ohel. What is the statute of the Torah? It says, if a man dies in a tent, what happens when a man, God forbid, dies and he's sheltered under a tent? The law is that any object, any utensil which is in that tent with the dead body acquires the status of tum'ah, of impurity. Because when a man dies in the tent, he has a very high level of impurity. It's called Avi Avot HaTumah, the father of fathers of tumah, of impurity. That tumah is the highest level. When that impurity is transferred to a living being, he becomes Av HaTumah, father of tumah, and it gets transferred through different stages, and the impurity is lowered through as it goes from the dead body to a human being and maybe to another human being. So anyway, what I was trying to say is that when, God forbid, a person dies under a tent, any utensil, any movable object in that tent, or indeed if a living person is in that tent or under that shelter, also acquires a degree of impurity. That's what the pasuk's telling us. That's the chok of the Torah. But we explained in previous years that Adam ki yamud ba'ohel, the word ohel, which means tent, also has another meaning. Because tent doesn't necessarily mean a tent like a house or any type of shelter or dwelling. It can mean the tent of Torah. Because Yaakov Avinu was Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim, was a man who dwelt in tents. Means the tents of Torah, the Beit HaMidrash. He was sitting and learning, as opposed to his brother Esav, who was not sitting but standing and running and jumping and doing whatever he was doing. I think we all get the message. So, tent meaning Torah. What does it mean a man dies in the tent of Torah? So, it means that a person should, not literally, but figuratively, should kill himself for the cause of learning Torah. That doesn't mean literally that he should commit suicide. It means that a person should learn Torah until it saps his strength, until his last breath. I think I mentioned that there was a friend of my cousin who, God forbid, was diagnosed with a very horrible illness, beginning with C. And it was inoperable. So it was just a matter of time. And this fellow happened to be a frum Jew, and he had chavrutot, he had study partners, and he had a learning schedule that was very demanding. And his study partner said to him, listen, I can see you're not well. Go and rest. Because he knew this was a terminal case. So the fellow told him, no. Then when am I going to learn? And he would learn, and believe me, he learned literally until he took his last breath. That is literally Adam ki yamud ba'ohel. That's somebody who saw the value of Torah, that it was his life's dedication. It really is the life dedication of every Jew. Every Jew has to dedicate his life. The men actively got to dedicate their lives to learning and being osek, busying themselves with Torah. The women have to support them. They've got their own portion of Torah they've got to learn, but their job is to support the men in only the way that the holy women of Klal Yisrael can do. So everyone's got a part in this. All of us, there's no exceptions. Men, women and children. It's got to be Adam ki yamud ba'ohel. Person has to kill himself for the sake of Torah. And it says that if a person learns Torah until he falls asleep, sleep just overtakes him, and he falls down on the Gemara, and you know what happens when anyone who's learned Torah in yeshiva will testify to this. There's times when people fall down on the Gemara, and there's a little dribble of saliva, excuse me if I'm being a bit graphic, or there might be a bit of schwitz, a bit of sweat coming from the head. You know what Hashem says about this saliva or this sweat? That they're toiling in Torah. That saliva to Hashem is like a ketoret, like a sacrifice, like a holy ketoret that you're offering up to Hashem. So great is that schwitz, is that sweat, and that spittle. A person applies himself to learning Torah. Many, many times it happens. Now, that doesn't mean that you can stay up all night and do whatever you want to do till 4 a.m. and then turn up in Kola or in Shiva and learn for 10 minutes and fall asleep for 3 hours. That's not what it means. It's talking about somebody who's literally, he's so dedicated to Torah that he will only sleep when sleep overcomes him. Like Rav Elioshev. Rav Elioshev famously slept 2 hours a night. It was the Gadol Hador, Zecher Tzaddik Kadosh Yivracha. And what about, I think it was the Vilna Gaon, slept, I believe, also 2 hours a night, but he split it up into 4 periods of half an hour. 1 period during the day of half an hour, and 3 periods of half an hour at night time. Not at the same time, I highly doubt. 3 different times in the night, half an hour, every day. And even then, when he would sleep, he'd be muttering Torah. His mouth would be speaking words of Torah. Can you imagine such a thing? But although these levels seem very far from us, it takes a lot of dedication. But surely this has to set some sort of benchmark for us. If we're going to come home and we're going to, we worked an 7-8 hour day and we've got no energy to open a Gemara or just learn some Chumash with our children, then what's that going to say for us? Are we so tired? We're so exhausted? We can't even learn for that 1 hour daily, even if it means learning with our kids, that they're going to benefit from it as well? Or our study partners are going to benefit from it as well? How can we stand by and know that there are people in this world who dedicated themselves to such a degree that they slept minutes every day? It's just something worth thinking about. And there's another level to this Adam Kiyamot Ba'ohel, a person who kills himself for Torah. In that a person, again, not literally to kill himself, but he should feel that nothing must stand in his way of his learning. Not any embarrassment, not any shame, not if he's going to be mocked by people. Because if you think about it, embarrassment is a form of death. If a person is embarrassed in public, it's like his life has been taken. That's why it's so severe. A person should never, God forbid, lo aleinu, should never embarrass somebody in public. Because if it's a public, doesn't mean a big auditorium. Public means 3 people. That's all. 3 people are watching somebody get embarrassed, then that person who's being embarrassed is like he's having his life taken. It happened to me once that I was embarrassed in public, and Baruch Hashem, I'd already learnt this halacha. So when I was embarrassed in public, this was more than 3 people. It was maybe, not everyone saw, but it was maybe in the room there was about 300 people. But it was very isolated. Not everyone, only maybe 10 people saw it. But it was enough. So when I was embarrassed, of course, Baruch Hashem, I didn't react because I knew the halakha. And as soon as I could, I quickly ran away and I found somebody. I found one of my son's teachers. And I told him, Rebbe, quick, somebody embarrassed me in public. Let me give you a bracha. He put his head down. He couldn't wait to get the bracha from me. Not because of me. I'm a nothing. He's a Rebbe. I'm a nothing. But when somebody gets embarrassed in public, he's got a koach. It's a matana. It's a gift from Hashem. You've got a koach of bracha. You should always give. So Baruch Hashem, I managed to give him a bracha. He was very grateful. It's the least I could do for him. The amount of hours he spent with my son, teaching him Mishnayot for years. Voluntary. This is outside of school. This is the least I could do for him. And Baruch Hashem, that I managed to find him of all the people at this particular event. So, how did I go into this? So a person mustn't feel that embarrassment or shame has to stand in his way. If a person needs to give over some Torah that maybe might make him look a little foolish, or people might regard the questions that he's asking within Torah as a little bit simple, you shouldn't let that stand in your way. That's also a level of Adam Kiyamut Ba'ohel. That's also putting yourself on the line for Hashem. Now, again, doesn't mean you should ask a question that's, you should have thought about it first. Yeah? If you're in a shir and you're asking questions that, first of all, you should, if you're in a doubt, ask the question. But there are times when there are questions, if we had learned already, we wouldn't have to ask that question. Or it might be a question that's disruptive. Again, you have to judge the situation. I can't tell you what to do. But what I'm trying to say is that a person shouldn't feel that he's demeaning himself by asking a question which people might laugh at or they might not take him seriously. You should do it because you're giving yourself over to Hashem's Holy Torah. It's so, so important. You should always push to do the best that you can. And there's another insight into this, Adam Kiyamut Ba'ohel, that when a person repeats the Torah that he learned or he read from somebody who passed away, that person in the grave, his lips move. Don't ask me how to understand it, but that's what Chazal tell us. So if you're repeating something you learned from the Vilna Gaon, or something you learned from the Pnei Yehoshua, the Chavetz Chaim, or whoever, their lips will move. Because you're recreating their Torah in this world. And in fact, if I remember rightly, I think this is Rav Chaim, I learned something from Rav Chaim Palagi. So I think Rav Chaim Palagi is the one who says that when you repeat somebody's Torah teachings, then from Shemaim they bring down that person to you. So you could be repeating a Rambam and the Rambam's there because you're learning his Torah. Actually, there are a few examples of this. How important it is. And also in the Gemara, when it says Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, or you sometimes see even 5 names. Amar this, Amar that, Amar that, all these different names of Rabbanim in the Gemara, one after the other. Why? Because I heard it from him and he heard it from him all the way back. All those names, when you learn, they will all get the zechut if you learn that one teaching. Because you had one original teacher who passed it on 5 generations, and now you're learning it in the Talmud. All of those Rabbanim, all of those Tanaim or Amoraim that you mention, they all get rewarded. How amazing it is to have Torah that is repeated in your name after 120 years. And there's a story which backs this up. There's a famous story actually, but it's worth repeating. I don't think I've said it before. There was a Rav who lived in Krakow. Krakow's in Poland, if I'm not mistaken. There was a Rav who lived in Krakow in the 1600s. His name was Rav Yehoshua. And this Rav Yehoshua wrote a sefer which was defending all the arguments of Tosfot, who argued with Rashi. So Rashi, one of his grandsons, was the main Bala Tosfot. His name was Rabbeinu Tam. So all the times that Tosfot in the Gemara attacked Rashi, this Rabbi Yehoshua wrote a book which defended Rashi against the Tosfot who argued with him. And what did he call his sefer? He called his sefer Maginei Shlomo. Maginei from the word Magain. Magain means a shield. Maginei Shlomo, the shield of Solomon. Who was Shlomo? Rabbeinu Shlomo Yitzchaki, who, in other words, is Rashi. So this Rabbi Yehoshua wrote a book defending Rashi against the people who attacked him. In halacha, of course. Didn't attack him because he was Rashi. Attacked him because of his halacha. So this Rabbi Yehoshua, the Maginei Shlomo, one night he had a dream. And in his dream, none other than Rashi himself appeared to him in his dream. And Rashi was profusely thanking this Rabbi Yehoshua in his dream. He said, Rabbi Yehoshua, I want to thank you for all the times you defended my opinions when I wrote my commentary on the Gemara. And I want to tell you that when you eventually pass away from this world, I will come and I will accompany you to your place in Shamayim. Now, can you imagine that? You wake up and you have such a dream. So he was obviously very excited. So apparently, when this Rabbi Yehoshua, the Maginei Shlomo, when he was on his deathbed, and his students were around him, he suddenly said, everyone should stand up to welcome Rabbeinu Shlomo Yitzchaki, who's come to accompany me to the Olam Hamet, the world of the next world. He actually physically said it with his own lips. So you can see the reward that a person has for bringing chidushim, bringing novel Torah ideas into this world and immortalizing them. And in effect, you can see that, and there's a few other stories like this, where people who've learned Torah and they've expounded Torah, and the people, the Rabbanim who they've expounded, have come to them and thanked them. either in a dream or whatever, or accompanied them to Shamayim. There's few stories about this. And Rav Chaim Palaji says further, he says, and this is very interesting, if there's a sefer, if there's a Torah book that you contribute money to, then you will sit next to the author of this book in Shamayim when your time comes after 120 years. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine if you lived in the times of the Rambam? And meanwhile, when everyone's burning his books or whatever, you donated money to the Rambam. You lived in that time and you supported him. You said, look, it doesn't matter how many books they're going to burn, I'm going to support you. Whoever that person was would be sitting next to the Rambam in Shamayim. Need I say more? Now, when I was thinking about this, I was extending this, and I was thinking to myself, nowadays, of course, people put out books. There's plenty of Sfarim that are written these days. English, Hebrew, Russian, whatever language it is. But there's another popular medium of disseminating Torah in our time. I think you can guess what it is. It's the audio share. It's the video share. It's the emails. It's all this type of stuff. Now, can you imagine what reward a person would get? Again, I'm thinking aloud, and this is totally my own thought. Can you imagine the reward a person gets if he supports a Torah class online? Or he supports Divrei Torah that put on email? Or any other type of medium? Or audio shiurim, MP3 shiurim? There's so many of these things that we have nowadays. I speak none other than TorahAnytime.com, who's got thousands of shiurim. Can you imagine if you put money and you support these shiurim? And these shiurim, they're not going out just one time. There are thousands of different shiurim that are being replayed again and again in different parts of the world. There's people in America, their shiurim being listened to in Taiwan and Russia and all over the world. Halavai, my shiurim will be listened to in all the far corners of the world. Maybe one day. But it's such a powerful medium. And there's ways we can support it. There's ways we can put the money down. And who knows? Who knows? Maybe after 120 years, we might be sitting next to some of these great Rabbanim in Shamayim. There are plenty of worse places to be than sitting next to these great Gedolim who are giving shiurim, whether they're alive or whether they're not alive. It's definitely worth thinking about. Now, just to finish off this point of the Adam Ki Yamud Ba'ohel, I'm going to tell you a mashal, a parable from the Chafetz Chaim. Says the Chafetz Chaim, there was once a man who, he wasn't exactly the best type of person. His life was his work. For him, he would work whatever it is, 8 hours, 9 hours a day and come home and just have his meal and fall asleep. That was all he knew. He was working to eat and eating to work. There was very little room for anything else. And this man happened to have a shop, and in the shop worked his wife. So they were partners. Everything was going well. And as the man got older, he realized there has to be something more to life. And then he went to a shiur, and he realized that he should be learning Torah. And that the way he was brought up in a kosher home. He knew what it was like to learn Torah. So, but he really needs to invest some time into learning. So he goes to another shiur and he gets caught up in it. And then he decides he's got to go to a daily shiur. He's got to sit in Kollel in the morning and he's got to dedicate some time on a daily basis to learning Hashem's Torah. But he decides he can't tell his wife because she runs the shop with him. And it's just too much of a matter to negotiate with his wife at this very present time. So he gives some type of excuse. He says, I never came, I wasn't on time in the shop today whatever excuse it was. I'm not saying this is a correct thing to do, by the way. It's just a mashal. So his wife, after a while, she's saying, what's going on? Well, he's coming late to work 2 hours a day, not telling me where he's going. So what does she do? She follows him one day, and she finds he's sitting in the Beit HaMidrash learning. So she confronts him. She said, this is where you are all day? You're spending your time here 2 hours? You should be in the shop. There's so many customers we got in the shop, and I have to come and serve them by myself. And you're here, you're reading. So what does he tell her? He tells her, calm down. You know what I suggest we do? He says to her. He says, the customers are not going to make any difference if I wasn't here, if I was dead. If I was dead, the customers will keep coming or they won't come. It's got nothing to do with me. So if I'm sitting in this Beit HaMidrash 2 hours a day, I am in effect, I'm dead to the world. Whether customers come or not, that's another thing. But consider it that I'm in here, consider it that I'm dead to the world, and then every time that I leave the Beit HaMidrash and I come to the shop, it's like Tchiyat HaMeitim. Then you should be happy that I've come to the shop. What was he trying to say to her? He was trying to say to her that his time that he was learning Torah, he, as concerns the world, he's batel umuvutal. He's nullified. Nothing can affect him. Nothing can disturb him. That time that he's dedicated to learning, as far as he's concerned, he's dead. And a dead person can't affect anything. That's it. They can't work. They can't do anything. There's nothing you can do about it. So he was telling them. Now, again, I have to say, I'm sure the Chofetz Chaim told this in a different way, a more elaborate way. The way I'm telling it now, it sounds like you should just be irresponsible and leave your job and leave whatever and go sit in the Beit HaMidrash. It's not always that easy. A person can always dedicate himself to Torah in some degree. He doesn't have to go and, take something that might be a drastic or perhaps irresponsible move. Again, all these things, you have to speak to your Rav. You have to find out what's the best use of your time. How can you best apply your time? And I think in most cases, probably all cases, that a person, if he really analyzes his time, he will realize that there's time that he's wasting that he could definitely turn into quality time of learning Torah. Definitely. I'm not talking about taking big chunks out of your day straight away that you could be working. That's not for everybody. But what about all the time again, I always talk about this, what about all the time we waste on the internet? All the time we waste seeing stupid things on YouTube or whatever mishugas we're watching, or nonsense on TV. That's time that can very easily be sacrificed. That's not going to make. It's not going to make it onto your gravestone. They're not going to say, "Here lies Shlomo ben Yosef, who was the greatest TV watcher. He dedicated himself 4 hours a night to watching television." That doesn't make it on the gravestone. What makes it on the gravestone? For a woman, she was Eshet Chayil. For a man, he was a man of honor. He was a man of honesty. Nowhere does it mention any of this nonsense. So, says, I believe this is Rav Shimshon Pinkus says, if it ain't going to make it onto your gravestone, then it's not important enough for you to be wasting your time with. That's a very, very sobering thought. It's a very scary thought. A person should always involve himself with things which are going to have nitzchiyut. They're going to give him eternity. Not things which will be over in 1 second and then that time is wasted. That time is... Who is it? There was somebody, I saw this the other day, there was somebody who was on their deathbed and their famous last words were, I think it was a very rich person, I can't remember who it was. He said, "I would give my entire fortune for one more moment of time." There's a person on his deathbed. But unfortunately, this person had to get to his deathbed to realize that. We as Jews realize that all the time. We know that time, you can't get it back. Bill Gates can give all his money, he won't get a millisecond more of time. Once he dies, That's it. Finished. There's no money in the world that's going to buy back that time. But yet we're frittering it away like it's nothing. Like it's very expendable commodity. Yeah, don't worry, we've got plenty of time. Can we guarantee that we've got plenty of time? Who can guarantee? Nobody can guarantee. Not the biggest Navi, nobody. Nobody can say, I've got this time guarantee. Every moment a person is on this earth is a bracha. It's a blessing beyond compare. So, another lesson we learn from Adam ki yamut ba'ohel, a person should kill himself with Torah. The person should make himself like he's dead when he's learning Torah. If he's dead, he can't affect the world whatsoever. In the non-Torah way. Of course, when he's learning Torah, he's changing the world anyway. This person or people who learn Torah, they're the people who are affecting the world in a very incredible way. Now, let's move on to the next part of the shiur. We're going to talk about the complainers. There's no chiddush here, there's no novelty here. There were people who complained to Moshe Rabbeinu from the moment he became Moshe Rabbeinu till the moment he died. Everyone was complaining, having a pop at Moshe Rabbeinu. Korach, the spies, everybody had something in for Moshe Rabbeinu. This week's parasha, you're going to see, if you turn to Perek Chaf Aleph, Pasuk Hey. V'adver ha'am ba'elokim of Moshe. So the people said, they spoke against Hashem and against Moshe. If it's not enough to speak against Moshe Rabbeinu, they even spoke against Hashem. And they said, Lama he'elitunu mimitzrayim lamud b'midbar. Why did you schlep us out from Egypt to die here? What are you giving us now? There's no water. All we've got is this funny white stuff that's raining down from Shamayim. We don't want that. We want proper stuff. What is this stuff you're giving us? We have to go out. We only get a specific portion every day. We can't take more. If our kids are... All the complaints came out. Now, do I need to tell you how miraculous the man was that fell from heaven? That it could taste like anything you want? That every person got exactly the portion that he needed? That you had guaranteed you had food every day? Who could say they got guaranteed food every day? Poor, rich, medium, big, small, whatever, whoever, they all got a portion of man every day. Now, there was a difference in how far you had to walk to get this man. If you were a righteous person, it fell right outside your door. If you were less righteous, you had to walk a little bit to get it. If you were really bad, you had to traipse for however long, I don't know how long, to go and get it. That was the difference. But everybody got food every day. Whole nation, 3 million people, that's no mean feat. But there were still people who complained. It's not good enough for us. What about all the other stuff we had in Egypt? So they were complaining. Nothing new. What was their punishment? These people who moaned and whinged to Moshe Rabbeinu, and as we see here, to Hashem. What was their punishment? There was a plague of snakes that came and was killing these people left, right and center. And then we know that the remedy was that Moshe Rabbeinu put a copper snake on a pole and they looked at the snake and then they were healed. But why was the snake used to punish them? Why was there a plague of snakes? You know, every punishment in the Torah has to be midah keneged midah, has to be fitting, the punishment must befit the crime. So how come if they were complaining that they were sent snakes? What's the answer behind that? So for the answer, we have to go back to the first time we have a mention of the snake in the Torah. Where was that? Parashat Bereshit. The Nachash HaKadmoni, the original snake. Now, what was he all about? Well, we all know the story. There was Adam and Eve in the garden, and they had everything. This was paradise, you have to remember. There was everything that they could have wanted. And this snake was their waiter. He was their shamash. He was serving them. So they didn't have to do anything. They just had to stay in Gan Eden. They had one mitzvah. They had it made. Hashem said, I'm going to give you a little something, a little, what's the word? Housekeeping rule. Hashem said, one housekeeping rule I'm giving you. Don't eat from that one tree. You've got so many trees everywhere. You can look left, right. Every tree you want is there. Just one tree, don't eat. What did the snake do? You think that's enough? All these trees? No. You know what? That one tree that God told you not to have, that's the best one. That's what's going to make you a creator. That's going to make you create worlds like God. God created this world. If you want to create worlds, you eat this tree. Now, of course, they listened to him. Well, Chava listened to him, and she ate the tree from the tree, and the rest is history. But what was the point about the snake convincing Eve to eat the fruit? What was behind that? Well, one of the answers is that the snake wasn't convinced that all that was around them was enough. He said, no matter what you have, you can still have more. Instead of saying, look how much we have, whatever we're given is a bracha for us. What did the snake convince them? Nah. And 99% is no good. You have to have 100%. And so what happened to the snake? When he convinced them that all that they had was simply not good enough. By the way, that was a mistake that Haman made. Haman had everything. There was just one Jew who upset him. And he couldn't see past it. Couldn't concentrate on what he had. He only concentrated on what he didn't have. And you know, Haman is connected to the snake. Anyway, so the snake now is showing them, don't look at what you have, look at what you don't have. And then what happened to the snake? His legs were cut off and he had to crawl on his belly. What did he have? He had to eat from the dust of the earth. And that had to be his food. What was the message there? You silly snake, you could have had everything. You could have been the servant of the progenitors of creation, Adam and Eve, the first man and woman. You could have been helping them. Instead, you wanted to give them something they couldn't have. Forget all the stuff they have. Have something, and only then will you be complete. Once you got the whole set. And now his punishment was, you only have one thing, and that one thing will be earth. And earth, you know, doesn't have any taste. Doesn't have flavor, doesn't have texture. It's dirt. And that's what you have to eat. So now what happened? The people who complained against Moshe Rabbeinu, they made the same mistake. They had the greatest, most miraculous food ever created. There was never something like the manna, and there never will be. It's a miracle food. Which food could you have that tastes like anything? You will never get a food like that. No amount of artificial creation. You can't simulate a tablet or something that can taste like anything. Like what do you call they wrote a story about it. That what's it called? Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. That girl who had chewing gum. The chewing gum tasted like a 3-course meal. That's only in fairy stories. It doesn't exist. But yet this man could taste like anything, any experience of any taste in the world ever. But it wasn't good enough for them. Because they didn't have the real thing. They wanted the beef. Fools! You've got the beef already. No, we want something else. Not good enough for you. It's like that old joke. You know, this old Jewish couple walk into a restaurant and they call over, after they had their meal, they call over the waiter and after the first course, they call over the waiter, is everything all right? So they complain about something. And after the second course, they call the waiter back. Is everything all right? And they tell him, they complain about something else. Each time the waiter comes back, is anything all right? Then the last time he comes back, he says, is anything all right? That's the same thing with them, with the people, the complainers. Is anything all right for them? No. The fact you've got a miraculous food there, doesn't matter. You can't see past it. So the punishment was the snake, because the snake made the same mistake. The snake wasn't thankful for all the things in creation. And subsequently, Chava made a mistake. She wasn't thankful for all she got in creation. She could only concentrate on that one thing that was forbidden for her. So what type of mistake is this? What do we learn from this? A person has to learn the simple lesson. Ezehu ashir hasameach bechelko. It says in Ethics of the Fathers, who is happy? One who is happy with his, who is rich rather. Ezehu ashir, who is rich? One who's happy with his lot. It doesn't matter if you've got a lot or a little. You will be rich if you're happy with what you have. If you're constantly thinking, I could do with a little bit more of that, you'll never be happy. If you've got your wife, your house, everything you have, and you want something else, you want my neighbor's car. You want your neighbor's car. He's got a Lamborghini, and I've only got a Ford Escort. I want that car. Fool, that's not magia for you. You don't deserve that. If you deserve that, Hashem would have given it to you. Hashem would have given you the money. Hashem would have given you the seichel, the sense to earn the money to be able to buy the car. It's not yours. If you want to get it. If you need it, get it. If you don't, if you're halashing about it, I've got to have it. That's nothing to do with you. Concentrate on what you have. And also a person could be living like a pauper. Oh, but he's happy with what he has. Oh, there's nobody richer than that person. I know people who live in a certain place in Eretz Yisrael, and they live in a house. I don't know how people can live like this, but they do. Live in a house, I think they've got 3 children, so it's a couple and 3 children. They live in a house where the beds don't fit in the house. The beds, during the day, they're flipped up on the sides. When the kids need to sleep at night, they put the beds down. When the beds are down, there's no room to move anywhere. And I tell you, there are so many people living like that in Israel. You'll never find anybody happier. Do they turn around and whinge, like we said last week, about the makpidity that I always go on about? Oh, I'm whinging about this and that, and nothing's right. No. They've got permanent Cheshire cat grins on their face all the time, walking around like a Cheshire cat, happy all the time, with much less than we've got here. They're not subject to makpidity. By the way, very parenthetically, I'll explain to you. I was in the car with my wife last week, the day after the shir, and she came out independently with the word makpidity. I never even told her about it. I said, where did you get that word from? Did you hear my shir? She said, no. I said, where did you get the word makpidity from? She goes, I just thought of it. So you know what? I'm thinking to myself, maybe we should really make this word popular. We should think of this word, and we should wage a constant battle against makpidity. Forget about all this whinging about things which are so meaningless, they're devoid of any notion. But we're stuck on these things. Just like the snake pushed Chava towards that fruit, you have to have that fruit. But what about all the zillion other things? Doesn't make any difference to you. We've got to fight against this makpidity. It's rife in our generation. Person should really put aside all this stuff. It doesn't relate to life in any way, shape, or form. Life is too short for this nonsense. Anyway, so a person has to appreciate what he has in a very real way, and only then will a person have true simcha. And I want to tell you something. There was many of you know that I have my wife and myself have a brachot party every month for the community in Edgware. And there's somebody who comes to this brachot party who told me something beautiful. And this person is a ba'alat tshuva. She wasn't brought up in a particularly frum home at all. And she's really now on the derech. She's on the way back. And she said to me something very inspirational. Very simple thing, which I really got a lot of chizuk from. She said to me that before her morning brachot, she spends, she's telling me this, I'm sure she's not exaggerating. I really believe her. She spends every day 45 minutes thanking Hashem in her own words for all the good that she's got in her life. 45 minutes every day. Every day. Thank you, Hashem, for my that I can breathe, that I can walk. Thank you for my house. Anything that you can think of, 45 minutes every day. Now, not everybody has that amount of time, but we might. Does anybody not have 5 minutes in the day? You're busy? Perhaps you can cut out something. Perhaps you can cut out, I don't know, whatever. Can you not find 5 minutes a day? Do what this woman does. Just says in her own language, Hashem, thank you for my eyesight. Thank you for the fact I can walk. I know we say it in our bracha anyway, but if you say it in your own words and you thank Hashem, I can't think of anything better than that. That's hakarat tov. That's the ultimate gratitude. Ashrecha to this woman who came up with that of her own accord. 45 minutes. I don't know. I was so impressed with that. And I quickly want to finish off because I don't want to run over time. That this parasha is where Moshe Rabbeinu loses his chelek in Eretz Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu, undoubtedly the most eligible person to enter into Eretz Yisrael. He had the greatest CV. How do they say CV in America? They call it a resume. The greatest resume of any person to enter Israel with the Jews, who he led faithfully for 40 years. He doesn't go in. How do you understand that? Because he hit the rock. By the way, Moshe Rabbeinu hit the rock was a result of what the people did. The people were, we said, they were complaining. So when Moshe Rabbeinu hit the rock and he was told by Hashem, you're not going to go in, who could have faulted a person in this situation turn around and say, you see what you did? You're complaining about water, and now I hit the rock, and you got me nervous, and whatever, and now I can't go in, it's your fault. Did we hear any complaint from Moshe Rabbeinu? Nothing. Doesn't turn against the Jews whatsoever. He accepts his fate, and that's it. That's one thing I wanted to mention. But you see here a few interesting things. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu said, I haven't got the pasuk in front of me, but it says, Moshe Rabbeinu said, do you expect me to bring water from this rock? And that's when he hit the rock. What did he mean by saying, do you expect me to bring water from this rock? So there's a few answers to this. First of all, I have to understand that when he hit the rock, he hit it with a mateh, with a stick. According to one opinion, this was his stick. This incident occurred at the end. This is not chronological in the Torah, by the way. This incident occurred at the end of the 40-year sojourn in the desert. Yeah? The previous parasha, we have Korach and the spies and everything. That was all in the beginning of the sojourn in the desert. That was in the first year and a little bit beyond the first year. Now we zoom forward to the end. Moshe Rabbeinu gets his refusal to enter Israel right at the end of his life. So, what was so special about him coming with a stick? And we know that he wasn't supposed to hit the rock. He was supposed to speak to the rock. But Hashem commanded him to bring his stick. So why bring the stick if you're not supposed to hit the rock? Just go, talk to the rock, and have the water and finish. End of story. Why did he have to bring the stick? So this stick was bought out of retirement. Moshe Rabbeinu had not used this stick for the last 40 years. He used it in the beginning, was with the plagues, with the crossing of the Red Sea. Then he had no use for the stick, he put the stick away. Now he was told to bring the stick for a specific reason. What was the reason? That people had come to expect miracles with this stick. We know all the miracles that happened when Moshe Rabbeinu had the stick. But people started to think the miracles happened because of the stick. Of course, nothing happens because of anything. Things happen only because of Hashem. So Hashem said to him, bring the stick, because when you bring the stick and you speak to the rock, you show the stick is in your hand, it's nowhere near the rock, and now you're speaking to the rock, you see that it's not the stick that performs the miracle, it's me, with a capital M, that performs the miracle. That was one reason behind this. And the idea was that the word of Hashem, the word of our holy Torah, was going to replace the stick. The stick was now going into permanent retirement. Now they were going to be leaving the desert. The desert was a place of open miracles. That was where the stick had relevance. Now there's going to be no stick, no open miracles. We're going to go into Eretz Yisrael. Now it's all hard work. Now it's ploughing, cultivating, working the soil with your hands, building houses. The open miracle now is a thing of the past. What was going to take over? The dibur, the word of Torah. That was going to be the transition. But Moshe Rabbeinu, oy vey, he messed it up. Instead of using his koach hadibur, his power of speech, to talk to the rock, he hit the rock. He used the thing that was supposed to demonstrate that the miracles were not going to be occurring from the stick. And he abused it. Now, of course, who am I to blame Moshe? It's not for me, but I'm just relating to you that obviously we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu's level. On his high level, this subtle mistake was enough to get him banned from going into Eretz Yisrael. But there's another opinion which says, from the Kli Yakar, which says that this was not his stick. This was in fact the stick of Aaron. Why was he told to bring Aaron's stick? Because Aaron's stick, if you remember, we talked about this last week, that Aaron's stick was the one that grew flowers, it grew almonds from that stick. A dry piece of wood, which had been cut down from the tree many years ago, that, through a miracle, grew almonds and grew flowers. So, what was the message? Moshe was going to take this stick to show, just like there was a miracle that you can have something beautiful like an almond or a flower grow from a dead stick, so too you can have beautiful water coming from a dead rock through just speaking to it. And water, we know, signifies Torah. You can have Torah, sweet, beautiful Torah, coming from places you would never expect it to come from. But there's always teshuvah. The fact that Hashem makes a gezerah, Hashem makes a decree, it can't be that Hashem decrees something and there's no way back. So didn't Moshe Rabbeinu have a second chance? Or in other words, what sealed Moshe Rabbeinu's fate? Why was he condemned because there's one action? Couldn't he turn around and daven to Hashem? And we see that he did daven to Hashem. In fact, in Parashat Va'etchanan, in the next book of Dvarim, we see that Moshe Rabbeinu offered no less than 515 prayers to Hashem, imploring Hashem to let him into Israel. And the answer was a very flat and resolute no. So what's going on? Why was he punished? Now, for the answer to this is extremely subtle, but it's a lesson which affects all of us. His punishment was so subtle because he was Moshe Rabbeinu after all. He was judged in a very strict way. Says Rav Elia Lapian, why was Moshe Rabbeinu punished so severely? Because when he was told that he wasn't going to go into Israel, he hesitated. He was deciding. He was thinking. He was weighing things up. instead of praying straight away to avert the decree, he paused. And that was enough to condemn him to the fate. So much so that when eventually he stopped the pause, it could have been a moment, I don't know how long it was. And when he did pray, even 515 different prayers weren't enough to take away the decree. This is a frightening message in the lesson of Zrizut, which means alacrity, speed. If a person has a mitzvah that comes to him, should never delay. Al tachmitzena, we say. Don't make it stagnant. If something comes your way, if a prayer comes your way, if God forbid somebody's ill, don't say, I'll pray for him in 5 minutes' time. Say it now, wherever you are, unless you're in an unclean place. Offer up the prayer there and then. If you see an ambulance and you know somebody's ill on the ambulance, you pray for them. Why wait? If a person, God forbid, has an illness, do you think he would say to the doctor, you know what, don't operate on me now, wait till tomorrow? He wants the refuah now. He wants to be cured now. He doesn't want to wait a nanosecond more. So the same thing here. Moshe Rabbeinu paused for whatever reason. Of course, we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, not talking about anybody. We're talking about the great Moshe Rabbeinu. On his level, that pause could have been, I don't know how long, or how little time that was. But it was enough to seal his fate. How severely we have to look at not delaying when a prayer comes our way, or a mitzvah comes our way, that we shouldn't delay under any circumstances. But lastly, I want to give another reason in Moshe Rabbeinu's defense why he hit the rock. And with this I'll finish. There was another incident where there was a rock that gave forth water. This was the second time that water was due to come from the rock. What was the other time? It was many years before, when Moshe in fact was commanded to hit the rock. He was told, hit the rock, and he hit the rock and the water came out. So, why then was it okay to hit the rock and now it was not okay to hit the rock? So listen to this answer. This is from the Lev Aryeh. It says the Lev Aryeh, the first time Moses was told to hit the rock, that water that came from the rock was in the merit of Miriam, his sister. Miriam was a great tzaddiket, but she didn't have quite the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu. So for her, they had to hit the rock. To speak to the rock is a different level. That was only in the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu was on a higher level. He should have spoken to the rock. But that was a greater miracle than hitting the rock. So in other words, here Moshe Rabbeinu now had a dilemma. His sister only had the merit that for her, the rock had to be hit. Now he had to bring the water from the rock in a much more sublime, in a much higher level. He would be embarrassing his sister if he talked to the rock. And now his sister said the water only came because of this lower level of just hitting the rock. And so Moshe Rabbeinu, although he could have talked to the rock, he hit the rock. Why? So as not to embarrass his sister Miriam. What a madrega. Although it was wrong, of course Hashem said, speak to the rock. That's your level. You can't make a cheshbon with Hashem. But it says the Lev Aryeh, he did it so as not to embarrass his sister Miriam. Although, again, it wasn't the right thing. Ultimately, he had to pay for it by not going to Israel. You can see what a madrega, what sensitivity Moshe Rabbeinu had. What love he displayed for his sister, who had displayed so much love for him those many years earlier when she was standing with the basket waiting for him. See, Moshe paid her back so as not to embarrass her, even at the expense of not going to Eretz Israel. Bezrat Hashem, all of us should display this an incredible sensitivity. We should all learn from our messages. We should never take things at face value. This is one thing that we learn from this parasha. Always look at things in a deep way, turn it around. There's not just one door in that corridor. There's many doors we can take. Look at things in a deep way. Because that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was telling us when he said to Bnei Israel, do you expect me to bring water from the rock? That's not the message. The message wasn't just getting water from a rock. That's not the whole thing. That was just a means to an end. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to teach him a lesson, an important lesson, and they didn't get the lesson. Yehi Ratzon, we should all learn the lesson of the rock, the lesson of Moshe Rabbeinu's sensitivity, the lesson that we should always take the right path in life. And Bezrat Hashem, that door will lead to the Bayit Shlishi, Mashiach Tzidkenu, may it happen in our times. Amen.